I noticed it when I went to close the curtains in the living room. The house was quiet. Too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears and makes them ache. Outside, the streetlight painted a muted rectangle of yellow on the carpet. I hadn't opened this window in weeks. The sash was stiff with disuse, its tracks lined with winter dust and the faint grit of city soot. The room smelled of aged upholstery, old books stacked in uneven towers, and the faint tang of coffee I'd left on the side table hours ago. The glass was dim, reflecting the living room behind me in a soft blur. That's when I saw it. My name, written in the dust, each letter delicately curved, too neat, too deliberate to be the result of some accidental swipe. My own finger wouldn't have traced those lines with such precision. I stepped closer, the carpet muffling my movements, and ran a fingertip near the edge of the letters. The dust shifted under my touch, fine and dry, clinging stubbornly to the skin. There were no smudges, no fingerprints around it, nothing to indicate anyone had been here. Must be the cat, I muttered to myself, though the sound felt wrong in the stillness. The house had been empty for hours, and though I owned a cat, it never climbed the furniture. The thought didn't hold. I blinked, and the reflection in the glass seemed off. Not distorted exactly, just delayed, a fraction of a second too late, as if the mirrored room behind me were watching. My reflection remained still when I moved. A shadow lingered near the bookshelf behind me, just at the edge of vision. I froze. The window had been closed all day, locked, latched. No one could have entered. I pulled back, hand brushing against the sofa arm. The upholstery was soft, familiar, yet it felt different, somehow tense, like it was holding its breath with me. The lamp overhead flickered, not the usual fluorescent buzz or lazy pulse of an incandescent bulb. It blinked, deliberate. I heard it then, a faint scrape, low and soft, like nails dragging across wood, coming from the hallway. My pulse jumped. "Who's there?" I whispered. No answer. Just the scrape again, closer this time. The front door had been locked since morning, the kitchen window sealed shut. The house shouldn't have been moving, and yet, I stepped toward the hallway. The carpet felt thicker here, almost damp, though I hadn't spilled anything. A vase on the side table tilted slightly, as though nudged by an unseen hand. The air was heavy, pressing against my chest. I turned back to the living room. The name on the window hadn't changed. Mara. My name. I knelt to inspect it more closely. The dust under my fingers was stubborn, but the letters retained their form. Then I noticed a faint streak of moisture, a condensation trail at the top of the M, warm, breath-like, though the air was cold. I shivered. The reflection shifted again. This time, my mirrored self blinked after me, a fraction late, not perfectly in sync. Something in the glass mirrored my movements with hesitation. I straightened and scanned the room. Everything else was in place. Furniture aligned, books stacked, picture frames unturned. But something was off. A faint indentation in the carpet led from the hallway toward the window, as if someone had knelt there, then disappeared without leaving a trace. My stomach churned. I whispered, "This isn't real." The lamp flickered again, and the light pooled across the floor like liquid gold. Shadows crept along the walls, stretching the furniture taller than it should be. The sofa's legs seemed to bow toward me. The bookshelves leaned. The air smelled sharper now, metallic and earthy, like the underside of wet leaves. And then I heard it, a soft exhale close to the glass. I jumped back. The exhale was my own. Or maybe not. It echoed mine but thinner, distorted, as though the house itself were breathing. I pressed my hand to the window pane, cold, smooth, except for the letters. They were warm under my fingertips, as if someone or something had just traced them. The air grew heavier. I could feel it pressing against my chest. My breathing quickened, and the name pulsed slightly under my palm, almost imperceptibly. I spoke aloud. "Who are you?" The dust shifted, one letter at a time. The A in my name wobbled, stretched, then reformed as an E. Mara. Mara. I stumbled back. The name was changing. From the corner of my eye, I saw more letters appear elsewhere. Tiny streaks forming on the panes of the adjacent window, on the inside of the French doors leading to the porch. Names. Names I recognized. The previous tenants. Aunt Lydia. Old Mr. Whitaker. The neighbor who had moved away without notice years ago. And finally, a name I hadn't heard in decades. Ella. I swallowed. My pulse rattled in my ears, syncing strangely with the faint rhythm of movement in the house. Not mechanical, not human. The air shimmered with dust motes, drifting like tiny ghosts caught in the lamp light. They swirled, then settled into patterns that spelled out more letters. More names. Waiting, watching, remembering. The reflection in the glass no longer mirrored me. My face stared back from somewhere behind the letters, distorted, calm, expectant. I felt the floor shift slightly beneath my feet. The carpet rippled as if the house were inhaling, preparing. My own heartbeat started to sync with it, slow, deliberate, pulling me into a rhythm I couldn't resist. I wanted to run. I wanted to leave, but the air pressed too firmly. The window called. The names whispered in the dust, curling toward me. I bent closer, almost hypnotized, and watched my own letters stretch, twist, and begin forming into something else entirely. A new name, someone else, someone waiting. I could not look away. The house exhaled, and I felt, for the first time, that I had never really been alone. The living room smelled of old cedar and mothballs, a lingering scent that had once comforted me but now felt intrusive, as if the house itself had held its breath too long and was exhaling it all at once. I was folding laundry, methodically, with the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen below me and the occasional creak of the floorboards responding to the slight sway of the ceiling above. The lamp on the side table flickered once, and I cursed under my breath, dragging the shade down to steady the bulb. It was past midnight, the house otherwise still except for the low drone of the electric clock on the wall. I had been tidying, trying to empty the last traces of the day from the room, when the radio on the shelf clicked on. At first, I thought it was my imagination. 1 second it was silent, the next, a soft static whisper that made the hairs on my neck stand. I froze, holding a t-shirt mid-fold, waiting for the appliance to give up and go silent again. But it didn't. The static thickened, low and murmuring, like someone was speaking behind a thick curtain. I approached cautiously, running a hand along the polished wood of the radio. The dial had not moved. The voice came then, half muffled, half insistent. Good evening, residents of Eastbridge Hollow. Tonight's council meeting has been postponed due to the flooding along Hargrove Lane. I frowned. Eastbridge Hollow. The name was unfamiliar, yet it felt lodged somewhere in the soft tissue of my memory, just beyond reach. Hargrove Lane, too, but not exactly. It was like a dream I couldn't quite remember, a place I had visited in passing but never consciously. And a reminder to Mrs. Calderon at 14 Willow Court, your package from the town library has arrived. Please collect before midnight. The radio's voice, smooth and domestic, spoke with a familiarity that gnawed at me. Willow Court, Mrs. Calderon. I shook my head. I didn't know anyone by that name. There was no library in my town with that numbering or that name at all. And yet, the cadence, the way the announcer paused, the soft background hum of ceiling fans and distant footsteps, made my pulse quicken. I felt as though I had lived there once, in some fragment of my life I had discarded or forgotten. I set the laundry down, my hands shaking slightly, and ran to the window. Outside, the yard was dim, washed in silver moonlight that pooled over the uneven grass. The wind moved through the trees, scratching against the siding in the same rhythm as the radio static. A shiver ran up my spine. The house felt heavier, more alert, as if listening with me, as if it had always known the broadcast would come. And a note for Mr. Arledge at 32 Cedar Pass. The electrician will be arriving at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Please ensure access. I stumbled back from the window. Cedar Pass. Again, I knew it or thought I did. Something deep and unspoken tugged at me, insisting that this town existed somewhere, just not here. Not in the map of streets I had memorized, not in any atlas I had ever studied. The living room shadows stretched unnaturally toward me, pushed forward by the flickering lamp, and the floorboards groaned as if echoing the radio's words. I sat on the sofa, the fabric prickling against my palms, and tried to make sense of the broadcast. It was mundane. Local errands, council announcements, trivial domestic reminders. And yet it was the familiarity of the details, the way they brushed against the edges of my mind, that unsettled me. I could feel the house responding in subtle ways. The temperature had dropped, my breath fogging in the lamplight, and the ticking of the clock seemed slightly offbeat, like it was marking time differently. Tonight, the Eastbridge Hollow Choir will be performing at the Old Stone Chapel. Attendance is highly recommended for the residents along Elm Avenue. Tonight's weather: light drizzle, with occasional gusts from the northeast. Rain? The sky outside had been clear moments ago. I approached the window again, and there it was. A faint mist curling across the lawn, silvered in moonlight, brushing against the edge of the driveway as if it had appeared only now. I blinked, and my own reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and pale, a ghostly twin in the glass. The radio hummed, a low undertone that seemed almost symphonic, harmonizing with the subtle moan of the wind. I tried to speak, to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The house itself seemed to pulse with anticipation. The furniture, old, heavy, familiar, shifted slightly, as though inching closer to me. Dust particles floated in the lamp's glow, hanging suspended in the air like tiny orbs of awareness. And then I realized, with a tightening in my chest, that the house remembered Eastbridge Hollow. It remembered the streets, the people, the routines. It had been waiting. And a final note to all residents: please check your doors and windows before retiring for the evening. Unseasonal gusts have caused minor flooding near the intersection of Hawthorne and Pine. Sleep well, Eastbridge Hollow. The words settled in my mind like sediment. Hawthorne and Pine. I could trace it, almost, as if I had once walked there, felt the worn cobblestones beneath my feet, and touched the carved wooden doors of the chapel. My hands were shaking. The house had folded around me, enclosing me in a memory that might not have belonged to me, or might not belong here in this time. I tried to turn the radio off, but the dial refused to budge. The lamp flickered violently, casting long, jagged shadows across the walls. The shadows did not obey the shape of furniture or ceiling. They stretched and twined like smoke, as if trying to guide me somewhere. And the static, the background noise I had thought of as nothing more than interference, rose and fell like a tide, carrying whispers of streets and faces I could not place. I realized then that Eastbridge Hollow was real. It existed somewhere, just not here. Not now. My memory, or perhaps my perception of time, had been tampered with, severed from the living fabric of that town. And the house, this quiet domestic cocoon, was acting as a bridge, attempting to pull me back, to realign me with the town that had slipped from the calendar of my life. I sank to the floor, pressing my hands to my ears, but the radio persisted. The voice called names, enumerated mundane errands, and described events that no one else could hear but me. The shadows reached farther into the room, and the air thickened, sweet and damp, smelling faintly of old books and rain-soaked cobblestones. The hum of appliances became a chorus, echoing the distant footsteps of residents walking streets that only I could remember. I whispered a name from the broadcast, Mrs. Calderon, and the radio paused. A beat of silence. Then the voice resumed, softer, coaxing, almost intimate. "We've been waiting, and now you're home at last." I understood, with a cold, sinking certainty, that the house had not been empty before me. It had been waiting for my return. Eastbridge Hollow existed, and in some twisted, temporal fold, so did I. My living room, my sofa, my lamp. They were merely conduits, and tonight, they were aligning with a reality that had never properly unfolded around me. The static receded, leaving the faint crackle of the radio as a heartbeat. The lamp's glow stabilized, the shadows shrinking back into their proper shapes. Yet the air remained thick, expectant, almost alive. and I understood, fully, that this house, the smell of cedar, the hum of the refrigerator, the dust motes suspended in lamplight, had been listening, waiting, and it had found the way to bring me home. I do not remember when the radio finally turned itself off, but the streets of Eastbridge Hollow are no longer dreams. They are corridors in my mind, etched by a house that knows me better than I know myself. And tonight I have returned.